Welcome to MarcusG.tv. I'm Chef Marcus Guiliano. I'm a chef on a mission. Today's mission is Chilean sea bass. Just recently I was interviewed on BBC Worldwide Radio on a program called Food Chain, and they saw a previous video of mine on Chilean sea bass, and I just wanted to recap my thoughts on Chilean sea bass. I thought it was a perfect time to do it. So let's see. So as a young chef in the 90s, early 90s, Chilean sea bass was really not a predominant fish. In fact, Chilean sea bass is really not bass at all. Let's start with the basics. Chilean sea bass is a fish called Patagonian toothfish. Patagonian toothfish does not sell. It's not you wouldn't go to a restaurant and say, oh, I'll take the Patagonian toothfish. And even worse, it looks just as ugly as its name. So through clever marketing, a guy by the name of Lee Lance, I believe is his name, Lee Lance in the 70s, 1977, renamed Lee Lance in 1977, was looking for an alternative name that would appeal to the American market. He considered other names like South American sea bass. What were some other names? There was a few names he was throwing around. South Pacific sea bass and South American sea bass. He ended up settling on Chilean sea bass. And it wasn't until 1994 that the U.S. Drug and the FDA accepted Chilean sea bass as an alternative market name for Patagonian toothfish. So it took a while for it to be accepted in the U.S. See, so what happens with fish is you have its scientific name, its proper name, and then you have its trade name. And a lot of fish have a trade name. So for example, there's a species called Pacific rockfish. Pacific rockfish is from the west coast of the U.S. Pacific rockfish can consist of up to a dozen, 15, 17 different fish that you wouldn't know of, nor would you know how to pronounce their names, and you'd never go to a restaurant and order them, but they're all lumped together to form Pacific rockfish. So in a restaurant serving Pacific rockfish, you'll see, or the restaurant, that many species of similar type fish on the Pacific coast can make up rockfish. So it's a trade name. So don't get confused with the trade name versus the actual real fish, the actual name of the fish. So Patagonian toothfish is marketed under Chilean sea bass now. Well, what happened, it was a massive success here in the U.S., massive success. So overfishing came very easy on that fish, legal and illegal fishing of it. So through poor management, that fish species started to collapse. Now, one of the whales I believe it's the sperm whales down in the Antarctic, they rely on this fish as a main source of their food. So what's happening was you all of a sudden had this whole disruption in the ecosystem, just not overfishing one species. When you take something out of the equation, other things are going to get affected. So that's what was happening. So in the late 90s, 1997, 1998, some chefs got together, there was a coalition formed, and it was called Take a Pass on Chilean Sea Bass. I actually signed up for that. I think it was 98, maybe 99. And I haven't served Chilean sea bass since then. I've worked at places that have wanted me to serve it. I worked at a country club that was like, you need to serve Chilean sea bass. And I really stood my ground on that, and I said, I really don't want to, and here are the reasons why. Why don't I get you some real bass, real American bass? Because there's only really a couple types of bass. There's striped bass, wild striped bass, that we can catch on the Atlantic seaboard, freshwater bass, and black bass. So when you see white bass, you see Mediterranean bass, you see these are just names to sell something. Bass is something that consumers can easily pronounce and relate to. So it makes it easy for chefs and the companies fishing, marketing, packing them, it makes it easy for them to sell. Bass is something we can relate to. You can relate to it, you can sell it. So through all this turmoil, Chilean sea bass got a really bad rap, and a lot of chefs were still using it. A lot of restaurants now still use it. However, Chilean sea bass has had some kind of a small comeback. There has been some leaps and gains as far as management of the species, more quotas. Monterey Bay Aquarium and the Marine Stewardship Council, places that actually certify fish sustainable, they've actually come on and deemed a couple areas of Chilean sea bass to be a better choice or more sustainable or sustainable. The problem I have with this is there's still some areas of Chilean sea bass that are decimated, that are suffering, the numbers aren't there. So for me as a chef, trying to sell Chilean sea bass that's certified versus uncertified, I think consumers are going to look at me and say, well, here's a chef that really values sustainable seafood, and if he's serving Chilean sea bass must be okay to eat. I think by serving Chilean sea bass, even if it's a more sustainable one, sourced from a more sustainable area, because it's all around the Antarctic. It all goes through the South Pacific. So you can land it in, you can land it in South Africa, you can land it in Chile, you can land it all the way around. I think you're giving a mixed message to consumers. I don't think consumers are that educated enough to say, oh, well, why does this chef serve it and say it's sustainable, but here another chef says it isn't, or this article says it's not, this is confusing, or this or that, or just to think that all Chilean sea bass could be sustainable when that's not the case. So I've still chosen to not serve Chilean sea bass. Another downfall to Chilean sea bass is it's very expensive. If you're in the restaurant industry and you're trying to make money or trying to make margins, it's not the first choice of fish to make margins off of. So it's also unattractive to certain business owners that are up on numbers to really say, well, to make money on this fish, it's kind of hard. So you can buy it at Chilean sea bass. It is certified sustainable. It is out there. There's a lot that's not out there. Is there illegal fishing anymore? I'm not sure how much that's happening, but through the 90s and early 2000s, there was a large amount of illegal fishing, which was part of what was decimating. Now, there's quotas established everywhere across the world, like so for swordfish through like Costa Rica and everything, those countries down there in Nicaragua, they have all these quotas on swordfish. But in actuality, they're exporting more swordfish than they're allowed to catch. So how does that happen? Because there's a lot of piracy out there, and it's predominant worldwide. So to say that every species out there that's caught is legal or reported properly is not true. That's part of the game. It's what's happening. So how much Chilean sea bass is still actually illegally caught? Well, these are questions that I don't know, that I can't answer. Could it be 0? Could it be 20%? I mean, at some point they were saying as much as 50% of it in its heyday was illegally caught. Well, of course, it's going to decimate a population. Now, the good news is, through careful management of species, you can actually revitalize a species' numbers. So, for instance, like wild striped bass on the Atlantic shoreboard, Atlantic coast, that was decimated, and in the 70s they took really strong stances here in the U.S. to make that fish illegal to serve. In fact, some states you still can't serve it, like New Jersey. So through careful management and now through sustainable practices, that fish has a very predominant stock again. The population has grown, and you can actually serve it again in restaurants, which is great, but it's through careful management that happened. So the question is, when we manage fish here in the U.S., can they manage fish the same way in international waters, in places where they, through these other landings through South Africa, through South America? Are they as strict as we would have been here in the U.S.? The answer is I don't really know. I mean, it's really tough to say that they're doing their job 100% anywhere, even in the U.S. So with that being said, yes, you can revitalize a species. You can make a good on a species. But for me personally, it's about still avoiding the Chilean sea bass or the Patagonian toothfish. I believe in calling things by what they really are. So for me, to put on my menu Patagonian toothfish would not really be a good marketing move. I don't think people would buy it. And to say Chilean sea bass, I think, even though it's the legal trade name of it, I think it's really misleading consumers because it's not bass at all. I'm Chef Marcus Guiliano. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. If you like my videos, please hit like, subscribe to my channel, and definitely pass it on.